So I've got a few requests to see my build since the Stolen Signal video. So I finally got some time where people aren't screaming, and I'm able to do an uncut video explaining what went to this build. If you look at the 22-minute run from before, you'll notice that I had an 8K then, and now I have Liberators. This is basically a glass tack build. It's pretty much standardized, as much electronics as you can. Forget about firearms and stamina. The nice thing about glass tack is that it can flex into a bunch of different roles. It can be, DPS, burst DPS with the sticky bomb and stuff. You can be sustained DPS with a turret. You can be a tank with a shield, and then you can be a healer with support station defib. So it's pretty much, the standard tank healer, damage dealer build. In terms of pieces, there's a few ways you can chain it around if you want to, but typically it's just 4-piece tack, and then for the chest piece you have vigorous, and then for the backpack you have inventive. So right now this is without any stacks. I have 400,000 skill power with the inventive active. So if we go over to character, let's see. I don't know if there's anything specific to skills. I have 50% skill haste and 400,000 skill power. In terms of weapons, I typically would recommend, if you're doing PVE, a 182 or a 204 weapon. These you can buy from the blueprint vendor, or you can farm them if you want. I would just buy a blueprint and then craft a bunch of them. I have a 182 Liberator blueprint from, I think, back in 1.0 or 1.1, where if you farm the DZ a lot, you could buy the blueprint. I don't know if that's available anymore, but I still had it, so I took a lot of time building a bunch of Liberators until I got stuff I wanted. For handgun, in this case I got a Centurion, and specifically just for using a first shield. I also have first wave X45 if I decide not to use the Centurion, but that's pretty rare. It's usually only when I want to do a shield build, and then I drop out my 2 Liberators. The reason I use Liberators, and they're 182, is because how skills interact with your weapon talents. So if you go to my character right now, if I go to, I believe is it weapons? It's combat. Damage to elites and enemy armor damage. Oh, that's my pistol. Let me switch to my rifle. If I go to my character and then I go to combat, you can see that my EAD is 50% and my DTE is 35%. That's just from the rifle, is a huge bonus. The pistol you saw had almost nothing. So the reason you pick a rifle is because it comes with the base enemy armor damage. So in this case, this has 23, and this is destructive. This is my my legendary one. It has predatory for passive healing. I also use it for solo. So it's got 23% armor damage. That's the highest roll. I think it's 18 to 23%, so you want it as high as possible. The damage doesn't matter. I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you do almost no damage with this gun. Like, this MP7 does more damage than this AR does. And the purpose of these rifles that are 182 and 204 isn't to do damage. It's to build stacks. It also does damage when you shoot them, but you're not going to be doing a lot of damage either way, even with a 256. If you have an AR that's 256, you can use that when you're not using the skill builds. If you're just doing healing or tanking, that's also an option. But if you're doing strict DPS and you want to do damage with like the stickies or the seeker mines, you want to get these rifles and then get talents like destructive and talented and ferocious, and this allows you to get all the extra damage in against enemies, because talented and ferocious, or talented triggers pretty much any time you kill anyone with a sticky bomb. If you stick a shotgunner, you'll one-shot them. Most enemies will take 1 or 2 hits. Your turret, if you deploy a turret, it'll mow through enemies very quickly and benefit from talented. It also focuses down support stations. So this is currently in my damage spec. So if you go to my talents, you'll see that my sticky bomb, without any stacks, it's 1.3 million almost. I have sticky bomb mods in all of my backpacks. So you can see I have an extra skill power, but everything else is in skill haste. So the priority for any rolls you want for any of your gear is going to be electronics first, obviously, and then skill power. No, sorry. Electronics first, then skill haste, skill power, enemy armor damage, and damage to elites in that order. You want to get as much skill haste as you can to keep your abilities on off cooldown, And then you want to get your skill power, because just raw skill power benefits all of your builds, while enemy armor damage only affects your PVE abilities, damage abilities. So if you want to heal people, skill power is obviously more helpful. Skill power cap, it's been mentioned before, but it's linear up to 450k, so you want to get as close to 450k, and then after that, it's not as important to get stacks. So in this case, I have pretty much most of my armor rolled in pretty good ways. I think they're all about 16, or sorry, all about like 1260s and so, and then all of DTE on them rolled. So you can see I have like max DTE on my knee pads. I don't think I have it. I'm not sure if it doesn't roll on gloves. Yeah. I believe I have it rolled on everything that has it. I usually skip over the electronics mods that have DTE, simply because I'd just rather have more raw electronics all the time. So everything else besides the one that had skill power on it is electronic skill haste. I also have a few extra 256 weapons that I use. In this case, I have a competent rifle. I probably should switch that to talented. But basically, any 256 weapons you carry are just in case you're not doing damage with your skills, and you want to be able to actually, you know, provide some suppressing fire or do some long-range combat. The skills for the damage side, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to be using seekers, stickies, or turrets. I usually keep extra mods that do stuff like extra radius or damage. I'm still working on the collection of turret mods, which is why it doesn't have any there. Pretty good solo setup would be like running a turret, pulse turret, and then seeker mines in cluster. The cluster mines will pretty much two-shot most enemies, and then if you're using the turret, your turret will build the stacks to allow you to recharge the seeker mines. The airburst in PVE, it's sort of interesting. I'm not going to say it's bad. The problem I have with it is that it's really finicky. It sets enemies on fire and they start running, so it makes it harder for your shooters to actually shoot the targets because they're sprinting away at their, you know, legendary speed. And it also has a hard cooldown while the fire is active, where you can't use the skill. So it actually is a lot slower at charging than most of the other skills at this tier. So I'd probably recommend, if you're doing group content, to either use cluster or use a seeker, or use a sticky bomb instead. For sticky bomb, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a little hard to use in most cases. A lot of people probably haven't used it for sticking enemies as much. But if you can learn how to use this is a lot more consistent damage, because your seeker mine will just go after its own enemy sometimes. And with your sticky bomb, it'll go after the enemy you aim it at, and you can set up things with your talents, like in this case I have like Demolition Expert and Chain Reaction, and I'll usually run Death by Proxy if I'm running for skill builds, and then just getting a lot of skill power, and then run Combat Medic as slight support, and then just blowing things away. I think if you stick any shotgunner group, they're all going to die. I think my best was like, I killed 5 shotgunners with a single sticky. Against most enemies, I think the only exception is Grenadiers. Against most enemies, you're going to do a significant amount of damage. I think against agents, it'll probably take them down to about a quarter of their armor. Grenadiers, for some reason, seem to have reduced damage in Legendary and Heroic, where they may take half damage. Heavies, so much HP. The most I've done against the Heavy, which was all armor damage, was 4.5 million. It's good for tick damage, because obviously they're gonna, when you blow up their backpack, you still have to do a little bit of shooting, but you're not gonna kill any heavies with it. But it is also, you know, a huge chunk of damage that most of your teammates can't do, because your sticky bomb ignores the shield and goes through it, and you know, people can't shoot through the shield and have to get better position. So it's also helpful to sticky them. If you decide to, you know, go for a little hybrid support, you can, you know, do something like a BFB and a defib, and then support your healer who's running a station. I typically wouldn't recommend running like pulse and sticky at the same time, because then you have no heal for yourself and you only have one defensive weapon. Like, I can use a sticky bomb to save it for when I'm in trouble, but usually I'd want a defensive heal or like a turret pulling aggro. Certainly you can do pulse, but now I'd probably do pulse and heal, so that gives you the ability to just, you know, boost someone's abilities, and then you can switch to a 256 weapon that benefits more from pulse. that basically covers it for the damage sides. You switch your mods depending on what you need. This is actually the build I use for soloing legendaries. It's just switching to Seeker Mine damage and then throwing a turret and throwing Seeker Mines and letting them blow things up. When you switch to healer, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I don't think there needs to be a guide for doing it. I usually go for something like, you know, triage and like battle buddy, and then use the defib, and then you got a free talent. You can do like tech support if you want to run heals and like a backup skill, or you can even try doing strike back if you're like afraid of dying, for example. But it's really up to you whether you want to do anything specific for that. For tanking, obviously you can just switch to a shield, and it's already a lot of shield damage. Let me actually get some stacks. Use the size one. So a lot of people were asking what the 200 underneath my grenades were. That's Centurion stacks. When you do damage with Free Republic, every shot is a plus 5% to your Centurion. So let me go ahead and clear that. So you can see it did 87,000 right there. With that, it's 44378. I actually think the number's bugged. Excuse me. I actually think the number's bugged. It's not like really 200,000. Oh, I actually have no idea. I think it's supposed to be 3 times, but it's not. I honestly think the description is bugged, but you do double damage with the headshot. If you have DTE or something like that going, or like a pulse, and you crit, you can do probably about 200k pretty easily with this. So now I have 30 stacks. You can see how much I have. I have about like 497,000 skill power. Above the cap, the returns are about like a third at most, and then it tapers off significantly. So if you're going like to 600k, you're not going to see what you would expect at like 500,000 if there were no fall off. You're basically not going to see very much improvement in performance after 450k for most of your skill power abilities. But if you look at the shield, you know, you can run a 4 million HP shield with 30 stacks. You can just get your stacks here, go to the instance, activate your shield, and when you heal your shield, it heals back 1.6 million HP. You could also run Assault Shield. It's got 2 million HP, which is probably more than enough for Stolen Signal. Stolen Signal, you only need about 800k HP, and then you get all the fantastic bonuses with that. I wouldn't really recommend Kinetic Breaker. You might as well just run a shield and a heal if you're doing shield. The other abilities, like, you know, like mobile cover, these are really niche. I wouldn't recommend them typically, because you can probably do more with support station and defibrillator and stuff like that. I mean, if you need cover, I would suggest having one of your teammates do it, and then just milking off of that. The other thing is, I typically like to run TAC Link, as you saw in the Stolen Signal run. The reason is because the TAC Link recharges in like 208 seconds. Most people with low skill power and skill haste, it takes like 400 seconds. This is really fast, and it goes faster because you're getting stacks like crazy from blowing things up with sticky bomb and turrets. So if you're, you know, playing more of like a front end role, you can basically back up the person who's shooting by deploying the TAC Link whenever you're needed. Let's see. So yeah, you can see the sticky bomb from 400k to 500k only went up about like 140,000. It's not a significant difference. Most of your damage is going to be provided by the actual EAD and DT bonuses. In terms of how you can arrange your gear, I already told you guys about how I use Vigorous and Inventive. Other things you can do is you can get a backpack. For the shield build, you can get a backpack and then swap to a Colonel Bliss's holster, and that gives you the ability to, you know, use actually potentially like a 93R or the X45. This needs to be rerolled, an X45 or something, and then you can get a lot of increased damage from that, as well as the ability to do EMP, which also supports your teammates. You know, if they're using MDRs, they'll be able to proc off the EMP effect pretty easily, and then you can stop like the support stations that are healing the LMB people in most difficult content. If you're doing solo, I'd probably go for Relentless in this slot, in the backpack slot. That allows you to get the passive healing off like Predatory. In addition to the weapon talents I also mentioned, you can also try Determined, but I find that in group content it's really difficult to get what you need for Determined, because you're going to kill one person and it's like 7.5%. I think my skill cooldowns for this are like 7.5% is like a second. If you can't wait a second for your skill, unless you're like blowing up 10 enemies, it usually isn't practical in heroics and legendaries and group content. I would personally say that Predatory if you're doing solo, or you know, pick something else that gives you a little bit more ability up front. Also, self-explanatory, if you're running a turret, you can also run tech support instead of death by proxy if enemies don't have deployed skills. Like, for example, if you're fighting cleaners without turrets or LMB without turrets, it's pretty common in Falcon Lost, and oh yeah, like Rikers in Clear Sky. Just go ahead and switch over to tech support and you can keep your station going for ages. For mods wise, Pulse, typically I do a recon pack, just make sure I get everything. It's already a pretty high, you can see it's 55% here. It's pretty capped for the recon Pulse. For defib, 240k self, you know, half of that's instant heal. That's almost a full heal. For support station, pretty self-explanatory. I know a lot of people like talking about, you know, support station healing speed. I personally don't find that as attractive in Legendary and Heroics, because the radius for the support station after 1.6 was decreased from 8 meters to 7.5 meters, and it's not that big of a difference, but the support station circle is really small and it constrains your team to work in a small area. So when you look at my Reclaimer videos, you see this enormous circle, and that's like, I think 12, it's like 11.5 or something. It's like 12 meter radius, and the reason I do that is because it allows your team to spread out so they don't all stack on top of each other and get blown up by sticky bombs, and it allows you to place it in more interesting places. Like you can place it a floor above you or behind you in cover. That allows you to get all the healing in for a group in a much more spread out location, and allows you to keep your station alive. It's really difficult to work in that small area. You know, if an enemy runs up to you and melees you, he's right there ready to shoot the support station. If you put it, you know, a little further, your people are more spread out, it gives you a little more space to respond. That's why I typically say, you know, if you're trying to heal people and keep them alive with a support station, they probably shouldn't be out of cover. They should, you know, like wait half a second to get an extra, you know, extra heal tick before popping out of cover. And then the radius is always going to be there if they want to move a little further, if they want to sit right on top of the station. That's pretty much what it comes down to for this build. This is basically standard fare. Anyone can do this. It's not like you have to spend years farming for a Liberator. If you don't have the Liberator blueprint, you can just get a lightweight M4. I think there was a 204 blueprint a few weeks ago. Lightweight M4. Try to get any assault rifle that has a high rate of fire. I think the ACR is 750. The best one would be a lightweight M4, since it's 850, as you can see here, which is also a Liberator. If you get an AK blueprint, I would just use that as a stat stick. I wouldn't even actually try shooting that much, because the AK just shoots so slow compared to most of the other guns. You want the high rate of fire to get all the stacks out as soon as possible. That's really about it. It's not some sort of magic voodoo build. This is something I was like, I want to just build full electronics. I'm tired of playing, you know, just shield only. I want to be someone who can, you know, heal in a pinch or something like that. And that's what it comes down to. I know the toughness is really low, that scares people, but if you have a support station and you have Vigorous, your toughness is about like 50% more, because you have the extra 50% HP bar. So let's see. My current health is 152k. You add 75k to that, it's like 225k just from Vigorous. That's a pretty survivable. And also works really well with inventive to keep your abilities up there. It's really nice to be able to, you know, overheal yourself and keep that extra ability power going. You're obviously not going to win in gunfights in close quarters, but I mean your team is there for that. For PvP, I would not recommend this build because obviously all the skills are geared towards just killing elites. If you were to do a PvP style build of this, I would probably swap out all the DTE for stuff like burn and shock resistance, and maybe get more toughness. Against players, you can't really ignore the toughness factor, and you're also probably not going to want to run these weapons, especially with the 1.6.1 change where they scale up and then you lose all the talents. As far as I know, you just want weapons that, you know, like have one unlocked skill like talented in the last spot or something that allow you to put out some damage. But you're not going to be winning any gunfights with these anyways. I'm sure you can apply this to like a Seeker Mine build if you want to be a complete asshole. Don't listen to my advice. Please stop trying to build like one-shot Seeker Mine builds. You're just wasting people's times when they figure out how to counter it. Just take it from me. Try something else if you want to be cool in PvP. You know what? Go build Deadeye. That's all I can say. If you want to be a troll in PvP, go build Deadeye.